Welcome to John Gets Games. This is my variety vlog for October 2016, and as you can see, I'll be covering a whole bunch of different things in this video, so feel free to skip ahead to the part that most interests you or stick around for the whole thing. I'm going to start with a general update for the channel, and in particular, as always, a super brief Patreon update. Over the course of October, 11 new pledges were added to the campaign, and there were 5 new producer level pledges, so that's just really great to see. It was another very strong month for that campaign, and I just really appreciate all the support that everybody is giving me, both the new people as well as everybody who has been supporting the channel in some cases for well over a year. It's just really great. Speaking of being supported by viewers, over this last month there was one crazy 24-hour period for the channel where one viewer, I'll give him a shout out, it was Calvin Wong, decided to make a little post to Reddit saying, hey, I really feel like this John Gets Games channel deserves to have a lot more subscribers. I'm surprised it doesn't. And, you know, whether or not you think that's true or not, it's just cool to see viewers doing things like that. And this is like maybe the 3rd time that's happened over the last 2.5 years that I've been doing this channel. And on the previous couple times, about 50 or 60 subscribers were added on in this section, which is great because in general, well, at this point, I was averaging about 13 subscribers a day. However, for some reason, this one completely caught fire. It just skyrocketed to the top of the page and stayed there for almost a full day. And in that 24-hour period, the subscriber count for the channel increased by 11%. It was about 650 subscribers in that chunk. It just completely blew me away. I was just like feverishly updating my phone every like hour or so, be like, oh my gosh, 70 more people. Oh my gosh, 80 more people. It was just very cool to see that kind of support, I guess. You know, I put a lot of time and energy into making these videos. I enjoy making these videos, but that doesn't mean it doesn't feel great when you get a little bit of something back from everybody. Just seeing a bunch of support come through like that, it's super cool. Also, I can't help but wonder if this like tricked YouTube's algorithm into thinking that my videos were more important than they maybe think they are, because before this, I was getting, like I said, about 13 subscribers a day, and now for the last week or so, week and a half, it's been averaging like 40 subscribers a day. So just really great to see that kind of growth. It was stagnating a little bit. It was at about 20 subscribers a day like a month or 2 ago, and it's kind of slowly going down, I think, because I was putting out videos for less exciting games and less new games. But hey, at this point, it's back up to just skyrocketing every day. So I have no complaints. Wasn't complaining back then, but still, it's always great to see bigger numbers when it comes to this stuff. As a gamer, it's hard not to gamify everything, including the amount of subscribers you're doing. And yeah, anyway, so that's everything I want to say about that. The last thing for the general update involves Board Game Geek Con, which is coming up really soon in just a couple weeks here in November. And I am really looking forward to this. Well, first of all, because this is just a great convention. It's going to be the 3rd year in a row that I'm going to be going to it. In fact, 3 years ago, this was the first board gaming convention that I'd ever been to, and I still just love it. You just play games for like 12 to 18 hours a day for 4 days straight. Just super duper great. But there are 2 kind of new things happening this year that change it from the previous 2 years. The first is that my wife Jessica is coming for the first time, and I think this is actually her first board game convention that she's going to be attending. She really likes board games, and she just wanted to see what this is all about, because of course every year I'd come home and tell her all this great games that I played and everything. So she wanted to check it out. So she'll be with this whole group of friends of mine. Like there's like 10 of us going out there this year. So it's just a ton of people that I know, and it's gonna be great having Jessica there. And we're gonna be gaming from Wednesday up until Saturday night, and then Sunday morning, Jess and I jump on a plane for Mexico, and we will essentially be doing our honeymoon part 2, because as you may or may not know, last year we got married a little over a year ago. We actually just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, which is super cool. Our honeymoon was pretty much washed away by Hurricane Patricia, so we ended up doing a little thing over here, but this is our second shot at doing just a big, like, all-inclusive resort on the beach in Mexico kind of honeymoon. So I'm super looking forward to it. It's going to be 2 of the best weeks of my life. Like, just going to a board game convention, playing games like crazy for 5 days, and then sipping cocktails on the beach in Mexico for 5 days. It's just going to be wonderful. And speaking of Board Game Geek Con, if you are going to Board Game Geek Con, feel free to say hi if you see me wandering around. I'll be wearing shirts like this. I got a big old logo on the back. And in fact, several of my friends are also going to be wearing these shirts. So there might be a little bit of John Gets Game branding wandering around the halls. So yeah, if you see me, feel free to say hi. I'm already scheduled to play a couple games with some people that I only really know through Twitter. So unlike previous years where I pretty much just play games with my core group of friends, this year I'm hoping to play games with my friends as well as branch out a bit and meet a bunch of people that I have been hoping to meet who I only know through the internet. So that pretty much wraps that part up. Let's now move into the question and answer section of the vlog. However, this time around, nobody asked me any questions. So instead, I'm going to ask you a question. I figure may as well take this opportunity to ask for constructive criticism. Honestly, I make lots of these videos and I tend to do things very formulaically, which is just my style of content creation. I'm not the most imaginative person out there. So what I would love to know is there some part of this channel that kind of irks you in one way or another, that you feel like, maybe not even irk, but just something that you think I could do slightly better? And I'm just going to say right off the bat, if it has something to do with me flapping my arms around and talking excitedly, a few people in the past have told me that I might do that too much and it's distracting, but there's just no way I can stop from doing it. It's just my natural state of being. So anyway, I would love to hear any feedback that you might have. And I would also love to get questions back from you guys. So feel free to email them over to johngetsgames@gmail.com. And in the next variety vlog, I will answer them in this section. All right, that's enough talking about me. Let's now talk about some games. In particular, let's start with the excited about section, and I'm going to be talking about Lorenzo il Magnifico. This game just came out at Essen, and it is definitely near the top of the list of games that I really want to try at Board Game Geek Con, because it seems to have some pretty cool mid-weight Euro stuff going on. So this is a worker placement game. And in general, worker placement games, like, I'm kind of take it or leave it with them. They can be good, they can also not be good. They need some other cool stuff going on. And the main cool conceit about this game is that you roll dice that are associated with the workers. There are 3 different color workers. And then you put them out on the public board, and everybody's workers have those die values. So if you roll the orange die and it comes out to a 4, then that means that everybody is playing with a 4 value worker for that one round. And what that means is you are going to be restricted on some of the various things that you can do, and you can modify these dice personally for yourself by throwing away some resources to, you know, getting rid of 2 servants. You should get rid of servants. You spend those servants in order to increase the die roll. So that might be a 4. You use 2 servants and now it's a 6, and you could do a more powerful ability out on the board. And so that in and of itself is cool, because there have been dice worker placement games in the past, but I've never seen any where everybody communally shares the same die rolls and are therefore associated with the same sort of luck. Like if all the dice are low, then everybody's going to be affected by that. But on top of that, I mean, that's a cool little idea, but that's in and of itself isn't enough to get me really excited. But when you combine that with some really solid, interesting looking Tableau engine building, man, I am completely sold, and I really want to check this out, because what you're doing with these workers is you are spending most of your time grabbing these cards from a big tableau, a big grid on the board, and you're putting them down into a personal tableau, kind of in some organized areas like some production areas, some buildings. You might be hiring some personalities, which will give you one-time benefits or maybe ongoing benefits. There are some goal cards that you are trying to get certain conditions met so that you can then play these like advisors down, and then they alter the rules for you for the rest of the game. Like you might put an advisor down that just says, well, every die roll is +2 for you now for the rest of the game. And just really powerful engine type stuff. And I love that kind of thing in general. So when you combine that with the cool die rolling thing, I'm very excited to give this game a try. It also appears to be somewhat cutthroat in a worker placement style, because, well, when you go to a spot, you take that card and nobody else can go to that spot. But also, the board is split up into, I believe, 4 columns. And if you want to go even to a column that somebody else has been to, then you need to pay a penalty of 3 money, which is a pretty big deal in the game. So you really restrict your opponents, and you can really get in their way and stop them from doing the things they want to do. I was slightly interested in this game from what I'd seen on some podcasts and whatnot, and then I watched a full playthrough of this game by Slicker Drips, who's been making some really great playthrough videos recently, just putting a ton of time into them. I've been really impressed, and after watching that playthrough, I just knew I really had to play this game. And in fact, all of the images you've been seeing have been screenshots from that video. Thank you, Tom Heath, for the permission to use these. And yeah, so super cool, medium weight looking game. I cannot wait to give this one a try. I would be really bummed if I didn't actually give it a shot at Board Game Geek Con. Let's now move into the Games of Note section, and I'll be talking about 6 different games that I played over this last month, although one is a bit of a cheat. I actually played it near the end of September and forgot to talk about it in the last vlog. And these are games that are either new to me or I played a particularly interesting game of them. So let's jump right into the game that I played at the end of September, and that was The Dragon and Flagon. Now, this game just came out at Gen Con, and it is kind of a chaotic game where everybody is in a crazy medieval fantasy-esque bar brawl where you are just like throwing mugs and chairs and swinging off chandeliers, trying to do damage to each other, but realistically it's not even damage, it's just reputation that you're kind of swapping back and forth. If I hit you, then you give me reputation. If somebody else hits me, I give them reputation. So it's a zero-sum reputation system inside the game, and you just play pretty much a certain number of action turns because everything you do is going to spend some amount of time, and at the end whoever has the most reputation wins. And there's just a whole bunch of thematic stuff going on here. From a theme perspective, this game is a really big win. Like, you definitely kind of feel like you are in this bar brawl. There's all sorts of kooky kind of niche things that you wouldn't expect would actually work, like pulling the rug out from people, or like I said, swinging from a chandelier into somebody else. But mechanically, it all kind of works out, and it happens in an organic fashion that just kind of feels like it makes sense. And everybody has a really powerful ability that they can activate once they are able to grab the dragon flagon or something like that. It's like this big golden cup of beer that's right in the middle of the pub you guys are all in, and once you get it, I guess you take a swig, and then everybody has an asymmetric, well, deck of things that they can do anyway. Most of their cards are the same, but there's like 3 or 4 special cards, and one of them is like a superpower, which might slam everybody back, or, you know, do various really cool things. And I enjoyed it. It was an okay time. It took, like, we played a 7-player game, I think, and it's fully simultaneous action programming type game where everybody puts the cards down that they're going to be playing all at once and then flip them over, and you evaluate them in a particular order. We played it with the random order evaluation, which I think thematically made a lot more sense, and I had an okay time. I felt like I was not really in control, and I don't think you're supposed to feel like you're in control in a drunken medieval fantasy bar brawl, but that also meant that I kind of felt like I lost, and I don't really feel like I lost because I played bad. I don't think I played well, but I didn't feel much of a ownership on how I did in the game. It was more like I was there, I was part of this experience. It was kind of cool, and I would play it again, but I don't think it's one that I'm hugely excited to play, mostly because it seemed like so many things are actually out of your hands, which again, thematically makes sense. Up next is A Feast for Odin, and as you can see, this is one of the bigger boxes that I've ever bought. It has a game inside of it. I think Descent First Edition was slightly bigger by volume, but not by gravity. Man, there is a lot of stuff in this box, and that is Uwe Rosenberg's next heavy style Euro game. And this is a big sprawling worker placement slash puzzle game, and I was pretty excited about it a couple months ago. I talked about it in my variety vlog because I really enjoy patchwork, and this game has that patchwork kind of style thing where you're trying to fit all these pieces in together, but this one has just this big Euro wrapped around it as well. And I continued to be excited about it, but I was kind of hemming and hawing about if I really wanted to spend a bunch of money on it or if I just wanted to wait until Board Game Geek Con and try it then. But then I just kept seeing people talking about it on Twitter and having such a good time on Twitter and posting photos and just talking about how great they thought it was. And I ended up pulling the trigger. Keith Collins, who is one of those fellow Twitter people out there, he was really digging it, and he kept posting up links for cheap versions of the game. And my will was finally broken down. I bought it for a pretty reasonable price. I think it was $80 shipped from Amazon. When you consider how much stuff is in that box, that's a reasonable price, and I am super happy that I did. I've played the game 2 times now. In fact, they were on the same day. I taught myself the rules, and then I played a full short game solo play of it to kind of figure out how all these action spaces work, because I didn't really want to sit down as a completely new person with somebody else completely new and try to teach it then, because it really seemed like the kind of thing where I needed to kind of flex my muscles and figure out what's going on first before I could teach it to somebody else. And I really enjoyed that solo play. And in general, I am not a solo play person. Whenever I do a game solo, I usually play about half of it and then stop because I kind of know what's going on and I mostly just want to play this with other people. But in this one, I played through the whole game and I really enjoyed that experience. And I could honestly see myself going back and playing this solo again because of the puzzly nature to it. Like, even though you don't have anybody else blocking you, well, I guess in the solo game, you actually block yourself. You essentially leave all your workers from the last round out onto this worker placement board, so you can't do the same thing twice, which is kind of interesting. But then after playing it, the solo game, that evening, I got to play a 2-player game with Jessica. And that one, I think it went a little over 2 hours. And I really enjoyed that one as well. Jessica liked it enough. I don't think it really blew her socks off, but she said she would definitely play it again. But that the theming of it with like the resources and little chits you put down, it does feel a little dry, to be honest. You know, it's like, oh yay, more wood and stone and, you know, this cube of ore. You know, it's not the most compelling thing when it comes to the resources that you're using, although the tiles that you're putting down onto your player board are kind of vibrant, and there's a whole bunch of them, and thematically, they kind of link it together in some pretty neat ways. Because the main thing that you're doing in this game is acquiring these goofy shaped tiles and upgrading them and then putting them out onto your player board. And that's really what you're thinking about when you're staring at this gigantic worker placement board that has like 60 or so spots on it. You are trying to figure out how best to chain things together to get the right pieces in the right sizes, hopefully as big as possible, onto your player board to get rid of a bunch of these negative points, as well as do a bunch of other things that are going to get you positive points, like acquiring ships and then going plundering and then eventually sending your Vikings away on immigrations with those ships so you don't get to use them anymore, and finding new entire islands that you can pull up and then start covering those with these little puzzle pieces as well. It seems like this game is just telling me while I'm playing it, you want to get good at this game. You want to invest in this game. You want to get better at it, because it does feel like such a satisfying experience. I am not good at it at this point. I think I can honestly say in those two games, they're both the short game, but in the solo play, I think I had in the mid-40s score, and in the two-player play, both Jess and I were in the 30s. And then I look at Twitter and people are consistently getting over 100 points, and I'm like, what? There must be a lot more to this game, or I'm just really bad at it. Fortunately, I've enjoyed playing it and not doing very well at it so far, but like I was saying, it feels like it's going to be worth getting better at this game, even if that means I'm just playing it solo by myself, just trying to figure out the puzzle of it, because it is just such a cool experience. It has so many interesting gears in the way everything locks in together that I've honestly been thinking about the game a whole bunch ever since I've played it, and more so than most games. And it's less like, ooh, I can't wait to play that game again, and it's more like, what can I have done better? Like, where did I screw up there? And just like thinking about how everything gets puzzled together. There's just so many routes and things you could do. And I will admit that analysis paralysis is probably going to be a big deal with this game. In the solo game, it doesn't really matter because the only person to bug is yourself. But I'm not sure if I will ever play this game at 4 players. If I do, I'm going to have to block off like 4.5 hours easily. I do want to try this at 3 players, and I'm just expecting it to be like a 3-hour game, especially considering there will most likely be 2 brand new people that I'm teaching it when I do play it at 3 players. So I am ultimately quite happy to own the game. I'm looking forward to playing it more, and who knows, maybe getting a review out sooner rather than later. It depends on how frequently I can get this monster of a game to the table, because there is just so much going on, and I think I'm probably going to want to play it a couple more times than I normally would for a review, just to wrap my head around everything that's going on, because this game is asking a lot of the players to figure out. It's definitely intimidating when you first start playing to figure out what the heck you actually want to do. But fortunately, it's intimidating in a exploratory kind of way. Like, you're excited by how intimidated you are to figure out how best to actually figure it all out. So anyway, I think that's pretty much everything I want to say about A Feast for Odin. Now we have Great Western Trail, and this is the other big, heavy Euro game that I played this last month. In fact, I talked about it in my last variety vlog, saying that I was really excited to play this one because it's the next big game from Alexander Pfister, who is a designer that I very much admire. I really like his designs in general. So I was able to get a copy of this game because my friend Edward, who runs the Heavy Cardboard podcast, he went to Essen and he actually muled a copy back and sent it over. So I was really excited to get the game because I wanted to play it, and also I really wanted to film a playthrough for this channel because it seemed like there was a lot of buzz around the game, and it's good to make videos for games that there's a lot of buzz for. And I ended up actually doing that. I played the game 2.5 times this last month. The half of the game was me filming a playthrough and then getting halfway through it and realizing that I was getting rules wrong and I was playing poorly, so I just scrapped it and ended up playing a 4-player game with my friends later on that weekend. And after that, I felt good enough to do a full playthrough, and that video has done very well for the channel. It's gotten way more views than I usually average for playthroughs, so I think there is quite a bit of excitement and many people who are interested to see how this game plays. So anyway, let's talk about how it plays. This is a deck building trail style Euro. That's not really a style of game, I suppose, but what the board is a big looping trail with some forked paths on it, and there are spots to put personal buildings down on the map as well as a bunch of neutral buildings that anybody could use. And you are moving this little pawn down the map, and you are modifying your hand. You're buying new cows. Your entire deck is made up of cows. You're buying new, better cows, putting them in your deck. You are putting buildings out on the map. You're hiring people that let you do all the actions better. And ultimately, when you get to the end of the trail, you want to have a high-value hand of cards, which means you want to have different colored cows in your hand, and you want them to be high value. And based off of how good that is, you put a little disc on the board, and then you might get a bunch, you will get a bunch of money based off of how high value your hand was. But you also have this little train that is kind of following the discs, and then you lose money based off of the gap between where you put your disc down and where your train is. So you want to keep that train going up so that you can keep that money, because money is the main resource of the game. It stokes the fires of the engine that you're using to buy more cows, to hire more people, to put buildings on the board, to do everything. You need money. And so far, I've enjoyed the game. I found it fascinating and interesting, but I'm not sure if I love it at this point. There have been two things that have kind of irked me, and at this point, I'm not sure if it's just me playing the game poorly or if it might actually be an issue that's baked into the mechanics of the game. And really briefly, the first is just card draw luck compared to length of the game. This is a deck builder, and you're buying these cows and putting them into your deck. And if you're playing like a 3 to maybe 4 hour game, you're not going to want randomness of card draw to affect the outcome of the game too much. And there have been a couple times now in the 2 full games that I played where it seemed like one player could have done a lot better if they had just shuffled their deck slightly differently and drawn some cards better from the top. And there are ways to remove cows from your deck, but every time you do that, you move your little train backwards. And again, the bigger the gap between your train and where you put those discs down, the more money you lose out on. And you need money to get more cows and hire more people. So you need to have that money. You can't just, just keep tapping out your engine by removing cows from your deck, because you'll just never have enough money to do the big things that you need to do. And I'm just a little worried about it, but I need to play the game a couple more times to see if maybe we just got really unlucky, or if this is a thing that kind of happens to somebody each time we play. There are lots of ways, other ways to try and mitigate this. There are spots on the board where you can go and draw cards from your deck and then discard some so that you can dig through that deck faster. But it seems like even when I had players do that, seen players and also played players, to really focus on it, like, oh my gosh, keep stalling before you get to Kansas City, try to get a better hand. Well, first of all, they might end up getting a better hand, but every time they stall out, they're slowing down their progress throughout this trail, and so it's kind of hurting them by not drawing a good hand early. So if you are able to eventually get to that good hand, you might lose several turns in the process, and it adversely affects you late in the game. Anyway, this is not a review. I need to stop talking about this one part because, like I said, the jury is still out. I want to play this game a couple more times. And the other thing that's kind of weirded me out about the game is that you have all these buildings that you want to play out onto the board, and it seems like it's surprisingly difficult to actually play those buildings out on the board unless you are dedicating, really focusing on being a person who puts buildings out. And there is an opportunity cost to doing that, because you need to hire a whole bunch of these craftsmen and then spend a bunch of money to get these buildings out. And that means if you're doing that, you're not moving that train, so you're not going to have enough money, or you're not getting enough cowboys to actually make your deck better, and you will end up tapping out and doing very poorly near the end of the game because you won't be able to get your disc far enough down the line. I've just been surprised at how few buildings have been on the board when the game ends. You have this big sprawling board, and even in a 4-player game, there were tons of empty spots on the board still. And there was one player who just built, I think, 1 building, and in the playthrough that I did, the player who won only built 1 building throughout the game, and I was just expecting buildings to be a little bit more important. Either way, the jury is still out. I've enjoyed the plays of this. I've not been like actively frustrated while playing it. It just hasn't quite played out the way that I was fully expecting to, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one evolves as I get better at playing it. Let's now move into the 4th game, which is Pandemic: Reign of Cthulhu. I spent a couple weeks down in Los Angeles earlier in October for work, and while I was there, I got to go to a local board game cafe twice called Game House. And it's a really cool place, by the way. If you live in LA or are near there, you should totally check it out. They have a bunch of board games. It's a really cool atmosphere. But anyway, I ended up going the second time with 2 people that I met on that job. And I found out that they liked Settlers of Catan, and they liked Skippo, and they didn't really know much about modern board games. So I said, oh my gosh, let's go here, let's have fun. I'll teach you a whole bunch of games, and I'll show you how great modern board gaming is. I tried not to proselytize too much, but I think I got pretty excited. And anyway, we went there and we played a whole bunch of games, but the one that I want to talk about is Pandemic: Reign of Cthulhu, because I had not played this version of Pandemic before, and they had never even heard of cooperative board games at all. So it seemed like a great way to bring these two wants together. And we enjoyed the game. We actually played it back to back. We played it the first time and lost very quickly. And we just reset and played it again and won by the skin of our teeth. And we really enjoyed it. They very much enjoyed the experience of playing this cooperative game and seeing what this was all about. And I enjoyed seeing how it differed from Pandemic itself. I've only played the base game of Pandemic probably like 3 or 4 times, although I did play through an entire campaign of Pandemic Legacy, so I'm pretty well versed with the structure of how that game plays, and there are some significant differences between Pandemic and this Cthulhu version. The first is there is only one type of disease. In this case, it is cultists that are swarming the map, trying to open up all these portals to summon these great old gods that are going to destroy the world. And so that keeps things a little bit simpler from a teaching perspective. You just have this one bad thing that you're kind of scattering around on the map. You also don't have outbreaks in this one. And the way it works in Pandemic is if a location has 3 of a disease and you want to put a 4th one in, instead you move a little track down and then you scatter these disease cubes to all the adjacent cities. It outbreaks and it scatters out, and then might cause another outbreak, and you have all these chains that you can just lose really quickly. There is none of that chaining in Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. Instead, if you are to put a 4th person down, a 4th cultist onto a location, it doesn't spread out on the map, but you actually just summon a new old god. And so you have less board dynamics going on, but you also have changing rules, which is neat, because every time you reveal a new old god, you are either going to have a one-time use bad thing that's going to happen immediately, or you might have an ongoing effect that's going to make the game harder for the rest of the game. And you shuffle up these gods every single time you play, and you don't even use all of them. And I think this is probably the biggest allure to this version of Pandemic versus others. It feels like from a variability standpoint, you are going to be playing a different game every time. And it does mean that you could luck into a really bad set of old gods and just kind of find yourself in hard mode on accident and just lose really fast. That's what happened to us in our first game. We had a Shoggoth figure, which are these big lumbering beasts that wander around the board trying to get to the portal locations, and every time they do, they summon a new old god. Well, we had one start on one of our gates, and so like pretty much right from one round, we immediately were summoning old gods, and we lost relatively quickly. But the other one had great tension because we seemed to be doing really well, and oh man, we got this in the bag, but much like Pandemic can sometimes do, that deck gets smaller and smaller of cards that you're drawing from, and suddenly, man, we got so close, we just barely won the game, which is really neat. So ultimately, I think that this is probably a better gateway version of Pandemic than even the original Pandemic was, because you have less complexity of having different colored cubes out on the board. Also, trading cards back and forth between each other is way easier in the Cthulhu version. All the cards are just a color versus Pandemic, where a card is a specific city. And in Pandemic, the original game, if I want to give you the Paris card, I have to be in Paris, and you have to be in Paris, and I have to spend an action to give it to you, or you can take it from me. In this game, just all the cards are red, or all the cards are blue, and we have to be in the same city to trade a card, but I can give you a blue card, any blue card from my hand, if we're both in a blue city. So it doesn't seem like it's an easier game because these old gods can really mess things up, but from a mechanical standpoint, I think it is easier to teach. So yeah, I hope to play it again at some point, but I think that I am not actively interested in acquiring a copy of it because I do think that it is less interesting because you don't have those things to think about, how to get somebody, these two people to the exact right city with the same number of actions. It seems like the puzzle itself is less complex. It's not easier to win, but it is easier to figure out what the right move is to do on a given turn. And anyway, it's a very neat, pretty looking version of Pandemic. I'm glad it exists. And yeah, if you have an opportunity to try it, especially with people who are new to cooperative games, I would totally give it a shot, even before playing the original Pandemic. The 5th game of note is Not Alone, and it is a small little game. You see right here, it's a tiny little package, and this was sent as a review copy, and I didn't really know much about it. I was just told that it's a one versus many style game where a bunch of people have crash landed on a planet, and one person plays this kind of like evil alien guy who's trying to assimilate them into the planet so they can never leave. They have to play with this alien for the rest of their lives. And so the alien wins if they are able to assimilate everybody before this rescue ship comes and rescues all the people from the planet. And I played it one time now. It was a 4-player game, and I played as the Beast, trying to stop these people from leaving, and there were 3 other people, and we had a really good time. Like, I went into this thinking, oh, this game might be cool, and by the end of it, every single person around the table was like, whoa, this was really cool. I want to try this again. One person who's playing is not into complicated board games at all, and this style of game is definitely complicated for that person. And about halfway through the game, the first half they're kind of playing randomly and not really in, and then suddenly it just clicked for them, and man, they were really into it for the rest of the game, and they got really excited and very much enjoyed it. So it even was able to grab somebody who's not used to this style of game. And now, so it is small, and what you are doing is, it's a bit of a game of hunt and seek, cat and mouse. There we go. The Beast is the cat, and there are a whole bunch of mice. And so essentially, there are 10 locations out on the board, and all of the people who are trying to run away, the hunted, are going to selectively and simultaneously choose a location they're going to go to. And then the beast player picks a location that they're going to go to, and they're trying to catch these people at this location. And if they catch them, then they lose their will, and if they lose too much will, then the assimilation track goes down. I guess you're not really trying to like eat them or kill them or anything, you're just, in my mind, the beast shows up and he's like, it's really great here, you should stay, that spaceship's never gonna come, and then runs away, and they're like, oh, I guess you're right, and then they lose their will. It's just funny from a thematic perspective, but from a mechanical perspective, it's really fun to like try and figure out. I've only played it once, and again, I was the beast trying to figure out where everybody was. Well, I guess it's an alien, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I enjoyed the process of looking at where everybody has been already, because they play face up the cards where they've been, and so their hands get smaller and smaller, and they have less options. But some of the locations they go to will let them refill their hand or even get new cards so they can go to new locations. And all in all, they are also trying to hit specific spots that move the rescue ship closer to the planet. And it just came together in a really cool way. I'm looking forward to trying this one again. It says it plays 1 to 7 players, and I would be totally down to try it at 6 or 7 players because so much of it happens simultaneously. I imagine the tracks are much longer with that many people. That might be a little much, but I would still give it a shot. Like if there were 7 people at a game night and we weren't sure what to play, I would crack this one open because I think we could probably get it played in about 45 minutes or so. And yeah, it was a fun time. So looking forward to getting more plays into this one. And now for the last game of note I'll be talking about. This one is Mythe. It was sent by Ludi Creations over, and as you can see, it is also a very tiny little box. And thematically, you are a bunch of mice. You are trying to go on a little quest and defeat a dragon in order to steal the epic golden cheese or something like that. And if you're the person to get there, you win the game. And this is a very simple, odd little game. We played it again at 4 players, and it's a push your luck style game where you only play your opponent's cards and you don't know what those cards are. So everybody's holding a hand of cards, and it might be 1 card, it might be 7 cards, and when it's your turn, you just randomly pick a card from an opponent's hand, put it out face up on the table, and see if you bust, because there's some obstacles that you might run into, like, oh, you fall into a pit. Your turn is over and you don't get to do anything. Or you might find, ooh, a legendary sword, and it has a couple adventure points, and you're trying to go down this little track, a certain number of adventure points each way until you get to the very end where you need to attack the dragon by essentially having one of these 3 special cards in your hand. And it's very random. It's very luck-based, obviously. If you are just randomly pulling things from your opponent's hands the whole way through, obviously if you are doing pretty good and you can just stop, there's a push your luck aspect to it of knowing when you should probably stop. But you could also just pull 1 card and bust immediately, and then that's your whole turn, and then it goes to the next turn, next player's turn. There is some, I don't know if I call it strategy. There are definitely things that you can think about to try and game the system, because at the end of each turn, you give away as many cards as you want to from your hand. So that is information that you have, and you might be like, okay, I'm going to give this obstacle to that person and this really good sword to that person, so when it comes back around to me, I will try to go to that person and pull this really good sword back out of their hand because I know they have it. But the problem is that the next person goes and they start drawing from that person you just gave the sword to, and you don't see them actually reveal the sword, or maybe you do see them reveal the sword and now they give cards randomly to other people, and did they give that card to that person or that person? And there's only so much tracking you can do, and even if you're tracking really well, you still might just draw the wrong card because people are shuffling it in their hands and just bust or just not get to the thing you want. I think this is a fun game for probably kids. And I know that people get kind of up in arms when people who don't have kids, like myself, talk about, oh, this game would be good for kids. But I guess as I was playing it, I was like, this is going to be a lot better than Chutes and Ladders or Candyland or something like that. You know, these like traditional games that I played when I was a kid. And I know there are lots of really good games that are coming out from publishers like Haba and whatnot for kids. And I think that this is likely going to be one of them as well, because it is very random. It's funny when you reveal bad things. It's great when you reveal good things. There is a little bit to think about, but the game kind of plays itself. So I don't necessarily see myself, well, I could say I don't think I'm going to play this game again with just a group of adults, but I think I'll probably keep it in my collection maybe for a bunch of years, because I have nieces, I have a new nephew, my sister actually just gave birth to a son, which is super cool. His name is Miles, and he's adorable. It'll be a few years till I can play any games with him, obviously, but I think I'll probably keep this one around just in some corner of my collection and actually give this a shot at some point with nieces or nephews and see if it goes over well, and if it does, then it'll probably stick around for a little bit longer. it's now time to move into the shifting shelf segment of the vlog. This is where I show you all the games that I was able to acquire over the last month and all the games I took off of my shelf in order to make space. And at this point, I am starting to change how I do this a little bit because, as you can see, a couple of the games on that list are not on my shelf. They are right here in my lap. We have Harry Potter, Hogwarts Battle, and Star Trek Panic. These were sent over by USIopoly, and I haven't put them in my shelf and removed things because at this point I am receiving many review copies of games and games that publishers wanting me to try, and I almost don't want to rip things off my shelf and say they're gone to try one of these games when I haven't even played it yet to put it on the shelf. So at this point, I'm probably going to start waiting until I play a game once before I actually stick it on the shelf and pull something else off, unless I'm just really excited about that one particular game and I know I'm going to love it and want to keep it. So yeah, if you have any questions about why I maybe got rid of any of these particular games, or if you are excited and have any questions about some of the games I have acquired and maybe haven't talked about just yet, feel free to throw those down in the comments. I think it was definitely a pretty big month for acquiring games, and I'm not sure what this section is going to look like at the end of next month because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the vlog, I'm going to Board Game Geek Con, and I'm hoping to not acquire too many games at all because I'm going directly from Dallas to Cancun on vacation. And so if I do acquire a bunch of games, either review copies from publishers or even just the free games you get at the start of the convention, I'm gonna have to try and have my friends mule them back home and figure that out. So that's a logistical puzzle game that I'll be figuring out in a couple weeks. And yeah, maybe this will be a really big list, or maybe I'll be able to keep it nice and small. Time will have to tell on that one. And with that, it's time to wrap up this vlog. I hope you've enjoyed it, and also, I am not sure how the variety vlog is going to work out next month because in the previous 2 years, I've done a special vlog for Board Game Geek Con, and I've talked about like 20 games that I played at the convention and my initial impressions of all those games. I don't know if I was doing monthly variety vlogs at this point a year ago, so I'm not sure if I'll just do a really long variety vlog or a usual one of these and then a special video just to talk about all the games I played. But either way, it's a safe bet that in a month or so, I'm probably going to be putting out videos where I talk about a whole bunch of games that I'm hopefully going to be playing over the next month at Board Game Geek Con and whatnot. So, as always, thanks for watching, and thank you so much to everybody who has been supporting this channel through Patreon, including the producer level pledges. If you too would like to directly support the channel and everything that we do here, you could do so at patreon.com/JohnGetsGames, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to see more variety vlogs like this, which I do every month, as well as full game playthroughs and in-depth board game reviews, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.